That's such a difficult mental, emotional state to be in, recently losing and dealing with all the accumulated losses. Like, what was that experience kind of filtering through your own, wellness in that state?
When I came on back in 1991, I couldn't imagine going to a chief and saying, I'm struggling. You just didn't talk about this stuff. And we just decided to start this nonprofit called First Responders Bridge. And we just sat there and put pen to paper and decided that we wanted to do retreats for first responders. And we call them retreat.
There is a better way. There is light at the end of this tunnel. And thanks to people like you, that message is getting out there, and hopefully we keep spreading the word so that we don't lose anyone else to that darkness. It's just not an acceptable outcome. I'll quit talking over you, sorry.
That's right.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, so I retired from the Columbus Police Department in Columbus, Ohio, home of the Buckeyes. And I was retired living in Virginia near Smith Mountain Lake, honestly, just enjoying retirement. When on February the 10th, 2018, Westerville, Ohio police officers Tony Morelli and Eric Jordan were murdered when responding to a 911 hang-up call. And I grew up in Westerville, the town where they were working. I worked a lot of cases with those guys, and that funeral just wrecked me. Just really hit me hard, and just brought back all the memories of all the friends I've lost over the years, both in the line of duty and to suicide. And the day after the funeral, I got together with my best friend growing up, Mike Pavolino, and Pav had just retired from that department as a detective and a SWAT team leader. And he did 4 tours overseas as a chief warrant officer, 3 in the Army. And we just got together and we were talking about all the friends we've lost and all that we've, been through. We've had 2, former partners die by suicide. And we just decided to start this nonprofit called First Responders Bridge. And we just sat there and put pen to paper and decided that we wanted to do retreats for first responders. And we call them retreats, but and it just kind of took off. Yeah, like I said, I was living in Virginia, and so I had to go back and tell my wife after about a year that we probably needed to move back to Ohio because everything kind of took off on us.
That's such a difficult mental, emotional state to be in, recently losing and dealing with all the accumulated losses. Like, what was that experience kind of filtering through your own, wellness in that state?
Yeah, well, first of all, when I retired, I did just under 21 years, and I had 3 of my vertebrae fused together. So I wasn't ready to retire. And so just that, I was kind of for about a year, like in this, I don't want to say state of depression, because I don't know that it was that, but I felt like I lost my identity, and my kind of lost who I was, because for, my whole family's cops, and I grew up being a cop, from when I started working. And so I felt like I lost my identity. But then when we started the nonprofit, after Tony and Eric and everything, it's just, I think it actually helped me. Because we tell our attendees to get involved in something bigger than yourself, and I think that having the nonprofits really help.
That's such a good message, and I'm curious, what other components of your events are you focused on? Because if similar to getting involved and having friendships beyond the job, what other goals and priorities are you focused on when people come to your retreats?
Yeah, so I'm involved in everything. I'm kind of a control freak, so like most officers, and I'm pretty much involved in every aspect of the retreats. But we have an incredible team. We have an incredible board. We have an incredible group of volunteers, our chaplains, our peers, and it's a long weekend. I mean, it's a long. We bring in our attendees on Friday morning. And then we finish on Sunday afternoon at noon. And so it's an emotional, it's an intense weekend. And so we have peer support teams there. We have chaplains there. We have clinicians there. And so, yeah, it's a pretty deep weekend.
Yeah. that sounds like it's got to be pretty rewarding and refreshing for those that are able to show up. Like, what kind of stories have you heard coming out of those?
I mean, we got a testimonial this week that someone said, let us know that he had a suicide plan in place, and the retreat saved his life. And we get that. I mean, I won't say every retreat, but we get, you saved our marriage. You saved our life, and we had one person that told us probably about 4 retreats ago, and he told us that this was his last hope, and he was going to give it the first day of the retreat. And if he didn't feel like he had any hope after the first day, he brought a gun. He was going to take his life that night in the hotel. And by the grace of God, the way our clinicians have our retreat set up, that first day is about letting them know that they're not alone. They're not the only one going through this. They're not the only one feeling what they're feeling. And luckily, he was able to, finish the retreat, and now he volunteers with us, and just a great testimonial to our team, I think.
So you kind of mentioned after that funeral, you were kind of in that state of lost feeling, purpose, kind of missing, identity missing, but it didn't sound like you were depressed and hopeless like some of these that are at the retreat. But I hear
Correct.
first responders, dispatchers, firefighters, military, police officers, they all kind of experience the same thing. How would you describe, why are these occupations all resulting in this similar and same process to the degree of hopelessness and suicidality? What's going on?
So we see 2 things mainly at our retreats. We see complex trauma, where they experience trauma after trauma after trauma, and then we go home and we don't want our families to go through what we go through, and so we keep it bottled up inside. And that's going to lead to problems with addiction, different vices, and eventually our high suicide rates. But then we also are seeing moral injury. We're seeing a lot of moral injury, and where we have this black and white, and right and wrong. And then so I'll try to give an example. Back during the riots and all the defund the police and everything, you have police officers out there saying, I'm doing it right. I treat people fair. I care about the public. I'm doing what I should be doing. And then they turn on the TV and everybody hates them. It seems like, and everybody's against them, and they don't feel like they're getting the support from their departments that they should be getting, and things like that. And that kind of leads to moral injury. And so we see a lot of that as well at our retreats.
So right there at the end, you kind of alluded to it leads to moral injury, but what does that mean? Why are the messages and stories on the news and media affecting how departments and leadership are treating their on the ground level employees and those that are serving the public? Where is it breaking down?
I think I don't know where it's breaking. It's frustrating because I'm not there anymore. I'm not there, but it's like they give in to the media. Like they let the media control the narrative when they, instead of backing their officers up, and so we like to say, instead of officer wellness, organizational wellness, because wellness should start at the top, and they should be getting support from the top on down, and not only with supporting them during critical incidents and events, but just their whole outlook on mental health. They should be, it should be from leadership on down.
But it feels like there maybe are some organizational traps that leadership in small to large municipalities are falling in. What are some of those that you've been able to recognize as, when a good leader steps into that position, they can understand it and they can make a clear decision and become a leader? And what's the difference between someone that's capable of doing that and someone that falls into those traps?
Yeah, that's a deep question. I think it depends on. I think a lot of it's experience. You have a lot of leaders. I was having breakfast with the deputy chief with Columbus yesterday, and he was a great officer. Then he was a great sergeant, and now he's all the way up to assistant chief now. But he's done the job. He's been there. But now, a lot of these departments, you have people getting promoted and not really doing much on the street, and so they can't really relate. And there's still that stigma out there when it comes to mental health. about, you're weak if you reach out for help. And I'll give you an example. The person I talked about that brought the gun to the retreat and was going to take his life, he went to his department afterwards and he said, I want to do a testimonial video. I want to do a video to talk about how this organization helped save my life. And his chief was like, do you want people to think you're effing crazy? And he wouldn't let him do it. And it's just like, this guy wanted to take his pain and use it for good. And then his chief basically just, completely crushed what he wanted to do and to try to help others.
Yeah. Some people call it a stigma that, if I accept help or accept the fact that I need some mental health support, that I will be considered weak. And my response to that is, how can it be a stigma if it is real, right? If there are still people in leadership positions that are going to have a punitive action response or a demoralizing or demeaning reaction to you being open and expressive about, my brain needs help. I've gone through enough traumatic experiences and it's just biologically the way our bodies and brain works, and I need to go get help. Where's the weakness in that, right? That's frustrating to hear, but it's everywhere. That's military, that's firefighters, that's police, that's even dispatch, right? Everyone wants to be recognized as high performing, high productive, completely resilient to all of these terrible things that are going on. And I don't think that's the trend, and those that are coming into these occupations are experiencing. How have you noticed that, newer employees and those that are younger, how do they see things differently?
Well, I think that, we're getting to them earlier now that they're early in their careers. When I came on back in 1991, I couldn't imagine going to a chief and saying, I'm struggling. You just didn't talk about this stuff. And, but now I think that, I know in Columbus and in a lot of areas in Ohio does a fantastic job. Department of Public Safety. They just do a great job of getting the word out to these new recruits. And I know at Columbus, I think the first day of the academy, they have a whole day on mental health and kind of tell them what the things that, to look for and signs to look for. And, but, then you have the people that have been on longer that there was that you don't reach out for help. And I had a good friend of mine, Dave Gerald, said one time, he said, first responders don't fake being sick. They fake being well. And there's so much truth to that because they're afraid to reach out and, they don't want to get their gun and badge taken. And that's the whole, the thought process back, especially earlier in our careers.
Yeah. I'm approaching a lot of this, first of all, as a son-in-law or a stepson. My stepdad was a firefighter for, 20 plus years before he had a barrel that he was staring down. And, his story of traumatic accumulation and those experiences of bad calls led him to that ultimate conclusion. And fortunately, when he went through his EAP process, maybe unfortunately his first therapist said, I can't help you. I don't have the capability of helping you, which, to someone who's already convinced they're so broken they can't be fixed, what kind of message is that? But he was able to give him a referral to a trauma therapist, and things were able to get better. But I'm coming from this as this problem is systemic. Like, why is the EAP model not working? Why is it failing?
A lot of it, I believe, is trust, confidentiality. So many departments it's a 1-800 number. Who am I talking to? These people are they, trauma, informed, or, or are they just somebody, that's that doesn't have that experience? And, we had a clinician one time say that after people attend our retreats, we pay for 6 free counseling sessions post retreat with clinicians that we vetted that all have experience working with first responders. And she made a comment that I really want to work with your people because they all have PTSD. And so that whole, come on, man, it's just very, very frustrating. And this is a professional. And so we're really blessed in the city of Columbus because they have a fantastic EAP program where it's a separate building. It's a wellness center. They have separate entrances for clinicians and chaplains. and then they have, other areas for different things within the building. But it's they do it really well in Columbus, but they're one of the few in the country.
Mm, yeah. There's a couple things there that you mentioned. One is, are they culturally aware of what's going on and can have the conversation with, the stories we get back. My therapist, told me they couldn't help me, to my therapist throwing up, my therapist crying, and that really was not an appropriate reaction to what I was trying to get across, because, I'm not crying. Why are you crying, right? And so
Yeah.
cultural competency, and then ultimately, I think there's a level of training for trauma treatment and trauma modalities that make a therapist really good. What have you noticed or experienced with that?
Yeah, then there's some good modalities out there. EMDR. I don't know that I've ever had anybody not have a great experience with EMDR. That's a great modality. And then ETMS is a newer, it's transcranial something. And I did it. And they put this thing on your head. You have to go Monday through Friday, and it's like 15 minutes, but it's like something with the brain waves. But I went from having nightmares, probably 2, 3 days a week, and I've been completed the program, and I think I've had one in 3 months. And so it's really really cool. This ETMS is really cool, a
Yeah, I think
modality,
that's, I'm not sure what the transcranial magnetic stimulation, right?
trans.
They connect things to
Yes,
your ears. It sends waves from earlobe to earlobe, and yeah, a ton of science behind that. I know that chronic depression and chronic issues right that way, and that the brain scans have shown massive amounts of inactivity, and being able to get the brain to then start firing in ways that are really critical, especially in the front left part of your brain, where a lot of your hopeful, more positive thoughts are being generated, and
yeah,
uh, the re-stimulation of that part of your brain supports that coming out of the darkness in so many ways. So that's a really effective one, and that is an FDA approved. Most insurances will cover it. Not the greatest process to get there. A lot of times those insurance plans require multiple medications prior to that, which
mm,
is in a lot of ways not a good thing, right? I But to that end, I think another modality that's working really well that is EMDR, kind of on steroids. It's accelerated resolution therapy, and
mm,
the statistics around EMDR are 10 or 12 sessions before you can get really your trauma reactivity resolved. ART has a national average of 3.7 sessions, and you're looking at 96% trauma reactivity resolved in less than those 4 sessions, sometimes 4 to 6 sessions. And so that modality, is paving the way for more advancements for trauma treatments that are faster and more efficient, which I think also alludes to destigmatizing, right? Because if I feel like I have to fork out a bunch of money for the type of help as a first responder, I'm not getting paid enough for that to be worth it. I'd
right.
rather say I'm fine and ignore that part of my health need than fork out a bunch of money to go to a specialist for trauma, right? So having
Yeah.
modalities get better and the therapists get better, I think, is a critical piece of that equation.
Yeah, exactly. And when I did the ETMS, we didn't have to take any medications or anything like that. But it was very it was very helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so there's obviously a lot of progress being made on multiple fronts. Um, and I appreciate you bringing up things like moral injury and some of the dichotomy of what's happening, the ambiguity of the situation. Right? While there's a lot happening, there's still a lot to be done. Where do you feel like, in terms of supporting first responders, a lot of the time and the attention could be focused? What's going to make the biggest difference here in the next 5 years?
So I got to be careful how I say this because there's so many so many things out there now, and And there's so many LinkedIn warriors out there now, so it's finding what's best for you and weeding through the ones that are trying to, it's where it's just money grabs, where we it just help you. We want to be there to help people and to help our attendees, and they don't pay for anything when they come to our retreats. So it's just kind of weeding through the right organizations to work with the right clinician. Sometimes when you're with, you may go through 2-3 clinicians before you find the right one. And so I don't know if I answered your question correctly, but that's something that's always we talk about a lot of our retreat is finding the right fit for you. And it may be EMDR, but it may not. It may be something else. And maybe just talk therapy is enough. And so it's finding what's best for you. As far as the next 5 years, I don't know. I mean, it's just still continuing to break that stigma. And I know you don't like that word, but it's just letting people know that it's okay to reach out for help. And then that's sometimes half the battle, when they realize that they're not alone. And we see that at our retreats. When they hear from some of our peer speakers and they realize they're not the only one going through this, you just see his shoulders go down because they realize I'm not alone. I'm not the only one, that's dealing with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that message of you're not alone and you're not crazy.
Yeah. Right.
You're not weak. You're not crazy. You're not incapable, right? Our brain is a biological system of mechanisms that work cohesively together, right? We have a physical component to ourselves. We have an emotional component, a spiritual component. And when parts of those get out of whack, especially as we get exposed to scenes and situations that are morally against our beliefs or against how we see what is right and wrong, like you mentioned, black and white, we see human on human violence, or we see parent to child, or child to parent, or a child in a car accident. We see things that don't sit well, right? There's this visceral emotional reaction, and all of our senses are gathering information, as emotions are just data, and all of that emotional data gets captured in a video format attached to a memory. So we have multiple parts of our brain that are getting latched together in that one tiny moment of time. That, to me, my mind thinks about it like cholesterol. It's like clogging the brain. It's impossible for those neurological connections to continue to flow while there's this negative mess of negativity in there. And so what's great about EMDR and accelerated resolution therapy are that through a visualization process and through the activation of eye movements, you can actually go into those memories, and they can actually let go of the attachment to the emotional reaction and the physical sensations. They can be detached and they can be resolved and actually flow through the body. And so now when you clear that junk out, now you have so much less burden, so much less kind of hanging on. We hear a lot of stories coming back from first responders saying all the triggers that I used to have are gone. I could go down to the center where the shooting happened. I can go to the corner where the car accident took place. I can face the triggers that used to get me and have no reaction. And that to me is hope, is hope, and that is light, and that is opportunity. And we need to continue to let first responders know that there are better experiences out there than just going to a therapist for talk sessions. Talk sessions, unfortunately, some of the data says 25 sessions can get 50% benefit. And that's great for those that need to talk. But ultimately, we got to start with getting some of that heavy traumatic memory resolved. And then a lot of the other stuff comes. How do I go home and have a relationship with my spouse and kids without the trauma reaction that I was holding on to, the irritability, the anger, just being frustrated and grumpy all the time, right? So those attitudes and behaviors, now we work on those once we clear out all the garbage, right?
Yeah, and when you talked about EMDR, I had a friend of mine explained it like prior to EMDR, his event was like a color TV right in front of his head the whole time, like it's all he would see. But after EMDR, several sessions, it was like a black and white TV off to the side where the event didn't go away, but he wasn't reliving it all the time. So I
Mm.
thought that was a pretty cool way to explain it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which subconsciously, that video playing shows up in our nightmares. It shows up in our dreams, right? And so, you know, all of this is data. All of what we experience in terms of trauma reactivity, our irritability, anger, uncontrolled outcome bursts, um, lack of sleep, our insomnia, our reliance on alcohol and other substances to kind of kill pain and kill these things. These are just signs and data, which, if we interpret them correctly, can lead us to the right solution to the problem. We have no problem maintaining oil in our vehicles and maintaining vehicles and maintaining our equipment and our firearms, but when it comes to our brain, we don't have the same attitude. Why do you think that is?
Right. Yeah. Because we have a hard time, the analogy of when you're on an airplane and the oxygen mask comes down, we want to help everyone else. We're fixers. That's what we do. But in all actuality, we should put the mask on ourselves first so then we can help other people. But we're not good at that.
Yeah, right. Well, as we wrap up here, what do you want to say to somebody that needs to put their own mask on?
You know what? You're not alone. There's people and organizations out there ready to stand guard while you heal. There's some good organizations out there, and if they're interested in coming to a first responders bridge retreat, all they pay for is their travel. It's at firstrespondersbridge.org.
Okay. And how is First Responders Bridge supported? How if someone is interested in supporting, how do they do that?
And we take donations. I joke and tell my wife I've become a professional beggar with nicer shoes and nicer teeth because it's that's the hard part. I'm a cop. I'm not a fundraiser, but our team does a really good job. But we have some fantastic corporate sponsors. The state of Ohio supports us and has us in their budget, and because they know that we're trying to, that we're helping these first responders.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mick, you're doing good work, and I know that I know God is behind you. And I don't think we bring up God a lot in this conversation, but I think it needs to be
Yep.
brought up more and more, and in the fact that all of us are His kids, all of us
Yep.
are special to Him, and the way we treat each other and the way we treat ourselves matters to Him. And I think He's giving us opportunities and allowing us to explore how we take care of our bodies and our minds. And He is interested in us getting better and being well. I know that that's hard to believe when you're in the depths of darkness and you don't have any hope and you've got so much going on. You're kind of you're your own worst enemy, right? Our negative self-talk can really be painful. So I want to just echo what you're saying, that there is a better way. There is light at the end of this tunnel, and thanks to people like you, that message is getting out there, and hopefully we keep spreading the word so that we don't lose anyone else to that darkness. It's just not an acceptable outcome.
Yeah, at our retreats, we have two speakers that'll talk about their faith, kind of what helped them get through the traumas they were dealing with. And we let our attendees know ahead of time, if you don't feel comfortable sitting in those sessions, you certainly don't have to. But it was something that Pav and I felt called to do, and we're going to do that.
Good. Yeah. It's time to be courageous and bold about it, because
Yep.
we certainly know the adversary is being courageous and bold and is winning a lot of these cases. These suicide cases are devastating, right? I'm a survivor. My brother took his life 2009. And a lot of his story, he was in the National Guard, and he was a veteran. But at 18 years old, I don't know that the military had a ton of that, but what was he dealing with
Yeah.
up into and prior to that? But different from military, where you have a few really intense years of exposure. First responders have 25, 30 years of that exposure. Their battlefield is the longest of any occupation.
Right.
And so it makes sense that there's some brain maintenance that needs to be done, and that that we have a shift in our stigma and our attitude towards maintaining our biological needs and not letting it continue to be a symptom of weakness.
I totally agree.
Awesome. Thanks, Mick.
All right, man. Thank you.